Hi there. Yeah, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to our weekly webinar series. My name is Andrea Davis. I am the International Programme Manager at the Civil Service College. A big hello to everyone that has joined us this morning. I can see that there's a few people that do join us each and every week, so welcome back. Thank you again, and a big hello to our newbies. It's lovely to see you on there. So as you can see on the front screen here, today's session will be on New Year, New Start, Health. And this is the first webinar of a three-part series that Sophie Bryan, who is our expert trainer here this morning, hello Sophie again, she is delivering this first part this morning with you for an hour, and she'll be looking at nutrition, things to do with your well-being, exercise and so on. I think we're all at a position now, it's, you know, coming towards the end of January, we're feeling a little bit, you know, maybe a bit down in the dumps, a bit sluggish, Christmas has been and gone, and yeah, what better way to kickstart the first part of the series to look at, you know, the aspect of health. So thank you very much for joining us, Sophie. I just want to go through some housekeeping rules first of all. As you can see, we're starting, you know, in the next minute or two, and we're going to dive right into the session, but we'll be with you for about an hour this morning. Please feel free to share your comments, thoughts, any questions throughout the webinar. We want to try and make this as engaging and as fun as possible. There will be time for Q&A at the very end as usual, but please feel free. We want to try and make it a really fun environment and hear from you all. So feel free to use the chat box, which you'll see there's a chat box symbol at the top for those that aren't very sure on how to use Microsoft Teams, because it's brand new for me as well. So we'll get going. Okay, so our UK footprint. Here is the Civil Service College. What do we do? Where are we? We are an independent training organisation that offers training solutions to the UK civil service and the wider public sector. We have delivered training to not just government departments, such as the Cabinet Office, DEFRA and DWP, but also devolved administrations like the Welsh Government and, of course, our NHS, as well as local authorities. We are based in the heart of Whitehall in Westminster, London. So when travel does permit, we would love to see you in our training classroom in the future. So please do come and say hello if you do pass us, or if you would like to find out anything about our training and what we do actually do that in the UK and also internationally. So as you can see here is our global footprint. We don't just do the training in the UK, but we can fly our trainers out to your country as well. So a big hello to all of our international participants this morning. If you do have any questions about international travel, please do speak to me at the very end. I will provide you with my contact details, and we can discuss that with you. We do have trainers, as mentioned, that can come out to see you in your country, but we also design training programs so you can actually come to London and do the training with us here as well. Okay, so our course categories and services, as you can see here, these are different categories that we have, and we deliver around about, I think it's about 70 or 100 courses now, ranging from accountability and governance to leadership and management, professional development, policy, law and legal, media, digital and data, finance and commercial, and equality, diversity and inclusion, which is our brand new course category that we have recently launched. We do our training both in the classroom, as mentioned, and online. So any of our training courses that you see on our website, please feel free to inquire with us about those that we can deliver virtually as well. We do it on Zoom and Microsoft Teams to cater for all. Okay, so Sophie, thank you again for joining us. We've had Sophie join us on a webinar. I think it was it in the summertime, Sophie? I think it was summertime. Yeah. We love working with Sophie. So as you can see here, Sophie is founder and chief workplace culture specialist at her company, which is Ordinarily Different Limited. She was previous director of HR and workplace culture with 17 years experience within her field. And she now trains, coaches and advises on cultural transformation projects with clients in from government organisations, NHS, charities and the private sector. Sophie's forte is radical organisational and personal effectiveness, and has spoken at many conferences, on podcasts and YouTube interviews, both here in the UK and the US. Sophie is FCIPD qualified HR professional, an executive career and life coach, and an action learning set coach. And not only that, Sophie is really big on yoga, and we've had many conversations about that. She's actually a qualified yoga teacher and nutritionist. And welcome again, Sophie. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure, I'm wondering, I'm looking at what you're doing here. Is there anything you can't do at all?
Suggestions in the chat, and maybe I'll see if there's something I can.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie, and we'll get started.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, for that lovely introduction. Just before I go through what we're going to cover, I just need to say to you, I have a daughter at home who is also online using Teams. And I'm sure many of you have also got children at home as well. So just to say, if at any point my Wi-Fi drops out, which it shouldn't do, it's been quite stable for a while. But if at any point it does drop out, I apologise in advance and I will come straight back to you. Andrea is actually controlling the slides anyway, just in case I disappear. So you may be able to have a quick chat around those things while I come back. And it's the same for you as well. If you get thrown out, please do come back to the session. I don't want any of you to miss out on what we're sharing. So just quickly to share that with you. Okay, so what we're going to cover today, well, we are going to look at nutrition, and we are going to look at physical well-being along with sleep and relaxation. But I'm not going to break them down specifically into this is the nutrition section, this is the exercise section, this is sleep and nutrition and relaxation, because actually they all work together in synergy. And you'll see as we start talking about how our body works, how the brain works, how we can really use nutrition and well-being, sleep and relaxation to really fire us up. So Andrea, if you wouldn't mind taking me on to the next slide, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So where are we at the minute? The world is temporarily closed. We've had the brakes put on. The world that we knew this time last year, and in fact, lots of people have been saying, oh my gosh, this time last year, COVID wasn't even a word. We didn't even understand that COVID-19 was going to be the magnitude of what it was. It didn't really exist on a global scale at this point at all. And so now here we are a year on, and the world is still temporarily closed. And so with that comes a lot of implications in terms of mental health, in terms of our physical well-being. If you think about perhaps some of you, and jot it down in the chat for me actually, perhaps some of you might be swimmers who actually that was your main source of exercise and you've not been able to go to a pool to swim. Perhaps some of you have been training for, I don't know, some kind of indoor pursuit. Perhaps gymnastics might be your thing and you've not been able to get into a gym to be able to use your equipment. So all these types of things from a health and wellbeing perspective have shifted us, not to mention the levels of uncertainty, the anxiety, this almost cabin fever feeling that I know a lot of us are experiencing at this particular moment, given that we're in the middle of winter, it's cold, it's dark, and we're not able to really go out and really, enjoy our lives in the same way we were before. So I'm really going to try and extract some of that out today as we go through the session. And Andrea, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to share this with you because I saw this on Instagram a few weeks ago and I thought, doesn't this just sum up how many of us are feeling right now in terms of the corona coaster? So it's the ups and downs of the pandemic. One day, you're absolutely loving your bubble, you love being around your family and your friends, and you're feeling more connected than you've ever been before with them. You're getting up early, you're working out, you're thinking, yeah, I am on this, I have got it. You started taking up hobbies. Perhaps you've been making banana bread. You've been very, very proud of yourself, perhaps posting pictures of your creations on social media, going out for long walks and thinking, yeah, do you know what? I've got a handle on this. And then out of nowhere, all of a sudden, you're miserable. You're crying. You're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I can't cope with this anymore. You're drinking gin for breakfast. I promise you, this is water and it's not gin. But, Andrew's got her gin bottle out as well. And you're missing people you don't even like. And I just think, I know it's quite a comical way of putting it, but I think most of us can probably resonate with this up and down of feeling like, yep, we're in control, we're used to this now, and then out of the blue, for no reason at all even, we start to dip back down. And so what I'm really hoping is throughout the time I have with you today, the next 50 minutes, I can help you navigate that corona coaster in perhaps a slightly smoother way, which may lessen off some of these bumps. Okay, so Andrea, if you could move me on one more slide, please. So let's first, in terms of health and well-being, thinking about what we eat, how we exercise, let's explore how the brain works first. So you have 3 parts of the brain that I'm going to talk to you about today, although you can see a few more on that diagram. The first one I want to talk to you about is the limbic brain. So your limbic brain is where all of your chemicals come from, your neurochemicals come from that part of your brain, and they are there to serve for your survival. So in the picture you can see it's been depicted as a monkey, and if any of you have heard of something called the chimp paradox, this is the part of the brain where the chimp paradox really comes into play. And the chimp paradox basically says that you have this monkey in this part of your brain that needs to be taken care of. When it gets frightened, it starts doing this crazy dance. It starts acting out. It starts punching and kicking. And that's then when you start to feel depression, anxiety, anger, all these different emotions that aren't necessarily potentially helpful for you. Your monkey's really acting out. Your chimp's going a bit crazy because it doesn't understand the situation. Equally, your chimp needs to be taken care of from the same way we need to be taken care of from love. We need to have food. We need to have safety and security. We need to have water. So this is almost like this little creature, this part of your brain that needs to be satisfied. But the way it acts out is really to warn us of different threats and different issues that might be coming up. So that's your limbic brain. Then you have your parietal brain, which is your brain's computer. So this is where all the unconscious stuff is going on. It's your brain is telling your eyes to blink. It's telling your lungs to breathe. It's telling your heart to beat. So that's the parietal bit that's going on in the background. You're not even aware it's happening, and it just goes on autopilot. Then you have the frontal lobe. So here you can see it's depicted as a person, and that's because this is the more conscious side of us being able to be more rational. So it's the frontal lobe that actually talks to the limbic part, to your monkey, to say, it's okay. Don't worry, you're fine, you're safe. You may be feeling really panicked right now. You may be feeling really anxious, but it's all right. Just breathe, you're fine. So your frontal lobe is the piece that can come in and be much more rational to help satisfy the limbic part of your brain. And obviously I mentioned just a minute ago that the limbic brain is where all your neurochemicals are released. So we're going to explore today a journey through your neurochemicals so we can better understand from a health and well-being perspective, how can we really bring the focus into our frontal lobe, the more relational part, the part of the brain that really can kind of rationalise the behaviour of the monkey and lessen some of the behaviour that goes on there. Okay, so Andrea, would you mind moving me on to the next slide, please? Okay, so cortisol. Just drop for me in the chat how many of you, just say yes, have heard of cortisol. So Andrea, have you heard of cortisol?
Never, no. So I'm going to put a big no in there.
Okay, so some of you are saying yes, some of you are saying no. Okay, so cortisol is a stress hormone. So your cortisol comes from the limbic part of your brain, the chimp part of your brain. And it's a useful hormone, but quite often, now our bodies have evolved from kind of prehistoric times, our bodies use that cortisol in ways that sometimes aren't helpful for us. So cortisol would be useful in a situation of fight or flight. If you was a caveman who was coming out of a spear and all of a sudden you turned around and there was a tiger chasing you, your cortisol would kick in. It's a stress hormone to warn you there's danger and would get you moving, much like happens with adrenaline. So cortisol and adrenaline kind of work hand in hand with each other. However, in this day and age, we're not being chased by tigers. So cortisol is this hormone that we sometimes have to really work to control in able to really elevate our health and well-being. And if we leave our cortisol levels where we are, so if we stay in a stressed state, an anxious state for too long, it can really impact on our health. So as you can see here, it can impact on weight gain. It can impact on having high blood pressure. It can be incredibly disruptive to sleep because, you know, when you're feeling stressed and you're anxious, your body doesn't want to wind down. You're staying in this high state of alert. So it can really impact on your sleep. And because of that, can have a really negative impact on your mood. It can drain your energy levels because your body is so busy putting all the energy into this fighting situation that you're in. And equally, cortisol has also been linked to an increase in diabetes as well. So it's really important that we work against this cortisol, that we bring our other neurochemicals into play, which are going to help reduce that cortisol down. So, Andrea, would you mind moving me on to the next slide, please? So this is how we do it. This is how we reduce our cortisol levels. So talking about neurochemicals again, so still in the limbic part of the brain, we're going to spend the rest of this webinar exploring these 4 areas. So dopamine, which is your reward chemical, oxytocin, which is your love hormone, it's the one where we feel connection with people, serotonin, which is your mood stabilizer, and then endorphins, which is known to combat pain. So we're going to explore all of these 4, and within these areas, we're going to talk about exercise, we're going to talk about nutrition, and we're going to talk about rest and relaxation. So let's kick off first of all then. We'll start off with dopamine. So Andrea, would you mind passing me on to the next slide, please?
Of course.
Thank you. So how many of you here, again, just drop it down in the chat for me, have heard of dopamine? Andrea,
Yes.
Dopamine? Yeah. And so, and I imagine probably out of all of the neurochemicals, this one's probably the more popular one that people may have come across because of the term dope. You know, people say to you, oh, not people, but depending on, you know, the kinds of people you talk, they might say, oh, yeah, that's really dope. That's really, that's amazing. Dope, the word dope has now come into kind of normal circulation in language because it's a feel-good word. Oh, yeah, that's dope. So dopamine is a motivation and rewarding feeling. So, you know, when you win at something, you know, how many of you have been playing board games with your family?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
a lot.
You don't have this competitive streak in us. Oh, my gosh, we have to win. And even though winning at Monopoly doesn't actually physically give you all the buildings and the money, you still have this sense of, oh, I've won. And that is partly to do with your dopamine, this sense of drive, this sense of reward and motivation. So it's a real feel-good hormone. But it also, the Monica chemical, oh, I love that. So when we look at where dopamine came from, when we were in those earlier stages of development as humans, then it would have been used for hunting and foraging. It would have been used for shelter. It would have been used for finding a mate, and also in terms of competition. So it's evolved from being something we needed back then to now something we can really harness and make really useful to ourselves as we kind of try to manage this chimp that we have. So it is associated with pleasurable sensations, and it is incredibly effective when you're doing something kinesthetic. So learning, memory, motor function. If you're doing something physical, then you're likely to increase your dopamine levels. Hence why you've got a picture here of a man running. So anybody who does any kind of physical exercise where you get your heart rate quite high, then you are likely, so anything that's running, swimming, any cardio-based exercise is really going to increase those dopamine levels. So if we move on to the next slide, Andrea, I'll give you a little bit more detail around how you can elevate your dopamine levels. So achieving a long sought after goal. So let's say, for example, you wanted to start knitting and you've been sat there with this big ball of wool and these knitting needles and you think, oh my gosh, I have no idea how I'm supposed to do anything with this. And then 3 months of lockdown and you've made a blanket. That is going to give you that higher level of dopamine, that, oh gosh, I didn't think I could do it and I've done it. So it could be something like that, or it could be something that's actually really physically taxing, something like completing a marathon. So it's very, very closely associated with achievement. It's closely associated with being rewarded. But equally, there's an element here of us thinking about surpassing our personal expectations, going above and beyond what we thought we were capable of. And every time we do that, we get this real surge of dopamine. So does anyone resonate with that? Can anyone go back to a time, just drop down in the chat for me, a time where they've had something they've had to do, they've achieved a long sought after goal, so it was really difficult, and they remember that feeling they had afterwards of, yes, I've done it. Andrew, have you got a moment like that?
I think it was getting back into running. I know it's a typical one. I used to love running when I was, a bit younger, and then I don't know, I think I just kind of left that hobby behind, and it wasn't until I started lockdown started, and then I started creeping up and smashing out my 5Ks again, and I used to think, how will I ever do this? And I did it, and I was so happy. It was such an achievement. It was only a 5K, but
and I bet you was buzzing for our
I was, yeah. 10K now, so
look at that, wonderful. And look here, we've got Johnny who's saying yes, being certified as a body pump instructor. Well, I think, Johnny, that works on 2 levels, doesn't it? I mean, one, actually achieving the certification, and secondly, I do body pump, so the actual class of doing body pump is going to really elevate your dopamine levels. So Johnny's got it working on 2 fronts there. James said first part run completed for me too. So again, for both you and Andrea and Jane, it's the I've got through something that I've really worked hard to do, but the act you were doing in the first place also increases those dopamine levels. So other ways you can get it is through sleep. So while you are sleeping, your body starts to build up your dopamine reserves. And the reason it does this is because when you wake up in the morning, your cortisol levels are naturally high. And the reason they're naturally high is because we need that little bit of stress to get us out of bed. Can you imagine if we had no stress to get us out of bed? There was no urgency. We'd just be in bed all day. So you do wake up naturally with this surge of cortisol to get you active, to get you moving. But it can hang around for a little while. And so it's dopamine. Once you've been resting, you've been sleeping, your dopamine levels are then elevated slightly as well to help kind of shift you out of that cortisol zone. But of course, you can get a lot more of it by getting more sunlight, which is a little bit more difficult this time of the year if you're in the UK. Very dark here at the minute, but of course you can supplement that with taking vitamin D supplements if that's your inclination there. Listening to feel good music. So drop down for me in the chat your feel good song. We might end up creating a whole playlist here, Andrew, of like dopamine.
Yeah. I mean, I need to create my running playlist. I need to add to it. So come on, give me some inspiration, guys.
The meeting chat, drop me down. There we go. Look, Happy by Pharrell Williams. I am on that, absolutely. Mine is Drunk in Love by Beyonce.
Beyonce.
Yeah, I just get going on that. So listening to feel good music. So we've got My Chemical Romance, Blackbird. Yes, Andrea. That's definitely one. Alison, Mr. Blue Sky is one of my friend's favourite songs. As soon as she hears it, her ears prick up. Yeah, some wonderful suggestions. Keep them coming in because we could create a real good playlist from this.
We could, yeah.
So listening to music that means something to you. So not just listening to the radio's on and it's kind of mindlessly in the background. This is something that means it's a tune that gets you going. And Rebecca said Steve Walsh, I found loving. So again, some really great ideas. Keep them coming through. Exploring a new skill is also a key one. So again, if there's something you've not tried before, you might going back to baking that banana bread on the roller coaster. That might be something. Oh wow, they're all coming through now. Eminem, ABBA, excellent. Okay. Then of course you've got meditation as well. So taking the stock back and really allowing your body to, I guess, absorb the situation that you're in, calming your mind down, will start to increase those dopamine levels up. Even though you're not doing anything physical, you will start to elevate your dopamine levels, but not to the extent as if you was doing something kinesthetic. As exploring a new city. Now, the reason I put this on here is because obviously at the minute we can't do that, but I have recently found a really innovative way of exploring cities with my daughter, which I thought I might just share with you. So there's a couple of YouTube channels where there's a guy called Adventure Sean is the one that I go to, where he's been to all these amazing different places around the world, and he basically takes you along on his journey. Now, I'm petrified of heights, but would love to go up the Eiffel Tower. There's not a chance you're getting me up the Eiffel Tower. Happen. So the other day, my daughter and I watched a 45-minute video of him talking about the Eiffel Tower and then going up it and giving you, and it was amazing because I felt like I got to explore Paris from the seat of my home. And I felt that dopamine surge. I was so excited watching this exploration. You can also do something similar on Google Earth as well. If you drop a pin into a city, then you can have a little look around. And I did that with Venice a few weeks back. Me and my daughter dropped a pin in Venice and we were just kind of looking around all the canals. And so even though we can't go out anywhere, there is still a way you can start to increase your dopamine levels, this exploration piece, even from your home. Okay, so let's move on to how can you eat and get more dopamine into your body. I've called this the diet. It's not an official dopamine diet. I have a thing about alliteration, and I thought diet works perfectly. So how you can increase your dopamine through nutrition? Well, dairy foods such as milk, cheeses and yogurts, they will start to increase your dopamine levels. Unprocessed meats such as beef, chicken breasts, turkey breasts. Going for really oily fish such as salmon and mackerels, anything that's rich in omega-3 will also help increase your dopamine levels. Eggs also will do the same thing for you. And fruit and vegetables wise, particularly bananas have quite a big increase and effect on dopamine. And actually bananas are such an easy accessible fruit, aren't they? It's not like with berries or with certain fruits you have to really peel and chop and work. You grab a banana and you can eat it. So I think that's a real easy, especially after you've been for a run.
Yeah.
And
you can have it with a lot of things as well, can't you? You can have it in your breakfast, like your cereal, and on bread, toast, whatever. So
yeah, and then in fact you can even combine the next couple together. So you can a handful of nuts. So almonds and walnuts in particular are very good in that area for increasing dopamine. And dark chocolate, so not milk chocolate, but dark chocolate also increases dopamine. Actually, dark chocolate, you'll see as we go through the rest of these slides, comes up a fair few times. So it has to be, for dark chocolate, it needs to be around 70% cocoa solids. So almost the darker you can get the chocolate, the more a dopamine impact you're going to get. So that's dopamine. Now let's move on to serotonin then. So, has anyone heard of serotonin? Drop it down in the chat for me if you've heard of serotonin. Andrea, have you heard of serotonin?
I have heard of serotonin, yes.
Do you know what serotonin is, or is it just a word that you're familiar with?
It's a word I'm very familiar with, but I wouldn't say I could reel off what it consists of.
Okay, it's just as well I've got a slide for you then.
I was going to say, thank God you're here to teach.
So, serotonin is your status hormone. It's the one that makes you feel a sense of pride, a sense of respect, a sense of belonging. You belong somewhere. It's one that also inspires confidence. It's one that also makes you feel quite strong in social circles. And it's incredibly linked to hierarchy, feeling that you have been recognised for what you bring to a certain situation. And so I put here, as social animals, we want and need approval from the tribe. And if we look at the picture here of Matthew McConaughey accepting his Oscar, it's very much this sense. You can see look at the serotonin beaming from his face. It's my tribe have accepted me as a good actor. They've recognised me. I've now been given a sense of status for the work I have done. So it's a real kind of, it's linked again to recognition. So you quite often have dopamine and serotonin working alongside each other. But it's a really important one for that sense of belonging, that sense of status. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide. So how do we get to more? So recognition for achievement. So getting that feedback from somebody. Isn't serotonin what can make military folk crazy? Well, Andrew, I've never heard of that. I don't know the answer to that one. But it's very important in terms of feeling a sense of recognition. You've been rewarded. Someone's giving you feedback. So I'm not saying we need to go out and get Oscars and win the Golden Globes to feel that sense of serotonin. But actually, for somebody to recognise you in a work situation, to say, Andrea, thank you so much for hosting this webinar. That was really great. I think it went really well. That's me increasing Andrea's serotonin levels. Sharing your work publicly. So you might have a rewards and recognition program in your organisation where they might do an employee of the month, or in a newsletter they might say, you know, particularly notable work that's been done this week by X, Y, and Z. So if that was you, you might start to increase those serotonin levels from that. Now, obviously, the work situation is very different, and bringing that into your home life is where you can also start to think about this in terms of how you give feedback and how you show your family that they're recognised for the part they play in the family unit. Joining clubs or groups can increase your serotonin level, which obviously needs to be done virtually right now. But actually, a lot of people are feeling very well connected, probably more so than before, because there's so many different groups. People are now joining some different online classes you can attend, webinars like this. We wasn't doing this a year ago. So we're all coming together in a way we haven't done before, which is also starting to increase serotonin levels. So receiving feedback and work activity I've already shared with you. Exposing yourself to the sun for 20 minutes, which is easier said than done when you can't actually see the sun in the sky, which is what's happening for me. I'm in the UK and I'm in the south of the UK. I'm in Kent, and it's just white. The whole sky is white. But if you have the opportunity to go out into the sun for 20 minutes, that will also really boost your serotonin levels. But also, going back to what I said about dopamine, it will also lift dopamine as well. And equally, exercise. So that sense of achievement, that sense of you pushed through something, is equally linked to serotonin here as well. And then we've got the consistent good sleep. So when we have broken sleep, we know how we feel, don't we? We woke up, we feel a little bit ratty, and actually those cortisol levels tend to hang around a little bit longer because we haven't had enough sleep. What serotonin does is when you have the cortisol here, it's kind of like pushing against you and making you feel rubbish. Serotonin comes in and just gently eases that out of the way. So it's really important, the more sleep we get, the less ratty we wake up, the less cortisol we need to kickstart us, and actually the more serotonin we can develop. Okay, so would you mind passing me on to the next slide, please? And here we go, my alliteration. This time it's serotonin snacks. So how can we eat to really elevate our levels of serotonin? So vitamin C is essential here when it comes to serotonin. So eating things like green peppers, citrus fruits, tomatoes, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, dare I say. I think they're a Marmite situation. You either love them or you hate them.
I love them. I'm one of them that does love them.
I'm with you on that, Andrea. But when I said this before, I had a whole load of abuse in the chat saying, "Oh no, not Brussels sprouts." But yeah, they are so good with you on that. Then we've got magnesium. So this is where your dark chocolate comes back in. But again, like I said before, the darker the concentration of chocolate, the cocoa solids, the much richer the magnesium content will be. Avocados, excellent source of magnesium. And nuts and seeds. So here we go again, the nuts comes in again. And seeds also contain some really essential fatty acids and oils. So if you can eat something like pumpkin seeds, you could put chia seeds into smoothies. You could use linseeds or flax seeds in cooking. So if you're baking bread or cakes, you can put them in there. So nuts are really, really great across the board, actually, but particularly when it comes to serotonin. And as I've mentioned before with nuts, that can also increase your dopamine levels as well. And then chamomile. So again, just in the chat, just give me a nod. How many of you drink chamomile? Might have some chamomile tea bags hanging around. I know some people actually use the dried chamomile flower as tea.
I like it. I usually have a chamomile tea before I go to bed. It's meant to make you sleep way much better.
Andrea said she's tried it, but yuck.
It's not the nicest. You do get used to it though.
Yeah, you do. And Andrea, I say this, and I say you should drink chamomile tea, but I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I prefer a mint tea.
Yeah, no, me too. I just do. Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, I think you have to have a couple of weeks worth of tea to get used to it, but it's not the nicest taste. You're right.
No, it's not. But with chamomile, there was a scientific study. It was quite a prolific study actually, that spoke about regular intake of chamomile uses the same part of the brain as what antidepressants do to anxiety. anxiety. So I am not by any means saying stop taking antidepressants and start drinking chamomile tea. But what I am saying is if you do feel that you're suffering, you're feeling quite anxious, you are quite on edge, then chamomile can be a really nice complement to that. Can help kind of elevate that mood level. And of course, chamomile doesn't just have to be ingested. You could use chamomile in creams as well, so it would still be absorbed into the bloodstream if you had some kind of chamomile cream that had some oils in it that might really help elevate that intake. I'm loving how everyone's going a bit crazy on the tea front now. I think I've started a tea list as well. We've got a playlist and we've got a tea list.
This is why we needed a pen and paper to write it all down.
Serena said to boil a fresh version of the plant is really nice. And Shireen, I have a friend who does that. She doesn't buy like the I have pucker, which I think some people mentioned.
Yeah, Shireen.
Which I've put in the cupboard for about a year now because I just tolerate them. But yeah, one of my friends actually uses dried flower buds, and yeah, I mean even just the smell of it is lovely. So that's an idea for you as well. Okay, let's now move on then to oxytocin. So oxytocin is very much to do with connection and bonding. So how many of you here have heard of oxytocin? Andrew, have you heard about oxytocin?
Yeah, again, it's definitely a word that I've came across so many times, but if someone was to ask me there and then, like you, without the prompts on the screen, I wouldn't know. No.
Well, it's your connection hormone. So oxytocin is really useful for reducing stress and anxiety, which is why it's really quite key to keep your oxytocin levels high. It's another one of those ones that will just come in and will just sweep cortisol and that unhelpful adrenaline right out of the way. So when you think about connection, it's really closely linked to calm connection, to feeling secure, to feeling trusted, to feeling like you're in a space where you are trusted but people trust you back. And it's that chemical that kicks in when you have a baby. So I don't know if many of you here have got children, but that feeling of holding your baby for the first time is probably the highest level of oxytocin your body would probably ever reach. It's the most incredible, and that's why you are just filled, and that's why it's called also the love hormone, because it just really takes over your body and your mind when you hold it for the first time. So that's the kind of feeling that you get from it. So how do we really create this? I mean, we can't all go around having babies all the time just to increase our oxytocin levels. That will definitely kick in my cortisol levels big time, I think, from a stress perspective. So how else can we get it? So, Andrea, if we move on to the next slide, I'll share with you how we can increase our oxytocin levels. So oxytocin, when we think about it being calm, connection, and we go back to the limbic part of our brain when we're talking about this chimp, this monkey that might be going a bit crazy right now, this is where you can give your chimp a little bit of love. You know, I was saying to you about a chimp needs to feel that love, that security, needs to be well fed and watered, but needs to feel like it's being nurtured by you. So this is how the oxytocin comes into play. So Andrea, great point, get a dog, exactly. So this is my first point. Oxytocin doesn't have to just come from connection with people. It can come with connection from animals as well, which is why pets actually are really important. And you've probably seen, I don't know, this massive increase in people getting dogs in lockdown. Now, part of that is from an exercise perspective, because as we know, wouldn't this be so much more fun if we could take a dog out for a walk and play in the park with the dog? But equally, it's this sense of wanting to feel connected to something else other than just who we are and our homes that we live in. And we've actually been trying to get a dog because our dog, my poor dog, she passed away in February. So she's missed all this wonderful time of us being at home with her and going out on long walks. And the dog situation online has just, I mean, you can't get a dog for cheaper than £3,000 now. And yeah, it's crazy. But it just shows you how much people need this sense of connection other than themselves. I love this. Andrea said, unfortunately, I think this may be why I'm online shopping way too much. Gift to myself makes me happy. But actually, it's a really key point you've raised there, Andrea, because there is a link to our hormones, these neurohormones that we have, and this sense of pleasure that we get when we hit the buy button. when we reward ourselves in that way. So it might necessarily not be oxytocin. It could well be serotonin, because you're rewarding yourself. It's like a well done, pat on the back. It might also be dopamine, if it's you've had to work really hard to save up for it, and you've challenged yourself and think, yes, I finally got it. It might be, oh my gosh. But absolutely, your neurochemicals will kick in on that one thing. But it's very temporary, isn't it?
I'm on a first name basis with the delivery guy now. He's at my door every single day. It's getting out of hand.
I think I spent more on the Amazon delivery driver's tip than I think I've ever spent on anyone else's, because he's just a regular feature on my driveway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gives you that temporary thing. But then it's after it's called the familiarity effect, that once you then take that thing out and you have it in your home for a little while, that level of excitement that you had is completely worn off and will diminish. Which is why I guess in some ways people get quite addicted to shopping, because of that feeling they get. So let's go back then to oxytocin. So massage, whether it's you massaging yourself, so giving yourself a hand massage or massaging your feet. And those of you that work out, you might give your calves a massage after you've done a run, for example. So even if it's not massaging someone else, it's massaging you, then that will increase oxytocin levels. But if you have an opportunity to massage someone, to give them like a neck rub or a shoulder rub, then not only does that increase your oxytocin levels, but it does for the person to which you're doing that to as well. So kindness meditation. Now, meditation takes all different forms. You could do meditation for goal setting, meditation for wealth, meditation for feeling fitter and healthier, which is very much a goal-driven exercise, which might increase your dopamine levels. So remember, meditation was on the dopamine slide. So kindness meditation is very much about giving. It's about, I want to be altruistic. I want to give something away to people. I want to have a sense of purpose and a connection with somebody. So that's why it says kindness meditation rather than meditation. Again, music. So going back to that sense of connection. When we connect to a song, when there's words in a song, the lyrics just resonate through you and you think, oh my gosh, this is like my life story, then you have that connection. Perhaps there's even a melody that you just feel really connected to. And again, you might start to see your oxytocin levels kicking in there too. Watching a movie. Okay, so here we're going to create a movie list now. So name for me a movie that you watch that you just think, oh, that was beautiful, or that completely resonated with me. I felt so connected with that story. You kind of lose yourself in the film. You almost think, I'm in it with that individual. You're empathizing and playing part of that role. So Mr. Holland's Opus, I've not watched that one. I'm going to make a note of that.
I have to say mine has to be Bridget Jones. I relate to her so much on so many levels.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I'm with you on that completely. Yep. Bridget Jones's Diary, perfect. So keep your list coming through of your movies, and let's see if we can inspire perhaps a new watch list for the week.
Oh,
Johnny, I love that. That is fantastic. Absolutely. Keep them coming through, and we'll see if we can inspire something new to add to your Netflix list. Disney movies these days are so hard. Well, Shireen. I don't know how many of you have the Disney Plus app, but there's a new film that Pixar released called Soul, and it is beautiful from a child's perspective, but also from an adult's perspective as well. So I would highly recommend that one. No, Johnny, I'm not going to give it away. No spoilers. I won't talk about it. I absolutely, thinking back to now, I've watched it twice. The oxytocin really kicking in. So Jane just said yes, just watch Soul. We've got Gillian, Avengers movies, love the teamwork. Yep, I'm with you on Avengers. Shireen, so Andrea is saying to Shireen, except for Up, which was so traumatic. I know. How sad is Up at the very beginning?
I've never seen that, and I've heard so much about it. I'm going to have to, that's my next lockdown film, I think.
It's sad at the very beginning, I think, and then it picks up and it gets a little bit nicer. But yeah, it's very traumatic. You're right. Strictly Ballroom. Oh my gosh, Alison, love a bit of ballroom dancing. Oh wow, definitely that. Haven't watched Strictly Ballroom for years, but I used to do ballroom dancing. way before Strictly, actually. So yeah, I must revisit that film. And then Ian has said free solo. Well, one of my things at the minute is I've really got into Mandalorian, the Star Wars spin-off, and I wouldn't say so much it gives me oxytocin. I think probably more dopamine from watching all the action. But you might notice, actually, from watching any kind of film, notice how it makes you feel and see if you can resonate with any of these neurochemicals, because you will get a reaction from them. And then moving on, okay, so giving a gift. So giving someone something, giving them an unexpected gift in the post, sending someone a little care package, sending somebody a card, sending somebody an unexpected email even, reaching out to someone who you've not spoken to for a while. And then volunteering as well, which obviously I realise in this capacity is a little bit difficult. But there are some different services right now that are asking for people to get involved with supporting on helplines, loneliness and befriending helplines, that kind of thing with local authorities. So there's still a lot we can be doing, even though we can't physically be out there. Rebecca's just said, I sent flowers to my mum and mum-in-law when we went back into lockdown. I know, I think what you've just said there, Rebecca, about it made them feel good and it made me feel good. So it's a double thing.
I was going to say, yeah, Andrea mentioned Christmas, which we can read in a second. I was just going to say it's that feeling of giving a present to someone at Christmas time completely overrules the receiving part of it, for me anyway. But Andrea says I sent actual Christmas cards to 30 of my team last year. It took me ages, but felt really good, and the responses were great. Oh, that's nice.
So Andrea, I think that's great because it fills you up with oxytocin. It fills like your levels up. And then the person who receives it, that gets that handwritten note from you, is going to get that oxytocin boost as well. So you basically sent them a little parcel of oxytocin. And I think that's lovely. Okay, so moving on then, how can we start to increase our oxytocin intake through our fruit and vegetables? So vitamin D, as I've said before, vitamin D is quite difficult to eat, and certainly to eat in the levels that we need to eat them in. So really your main source of vitamin D is going to be from being out there in the sunshine. And the best thing we can do in the summer is to not cover ourselves in SPF straight away, is to give ourselves 15-20 minutes out in that sunshine before we cover ourselves up. Now, there's a caveat to that, because obviously different skin conditions may have contraindications to that, and also depends on how hot it is and what time of the day you're going out. So obviously you make up your own mind on that. I'm not going to tell you, go out and after 20 minutes you've got burnt. Sophie, you tell people to do it. You make up your own mind on that. But if you can go out at some point, just a small period of time unprotected from the sun, just to allow that vitamin D to be absorbed into your skin, then that will make a big difference to your oxytocin levels. Vitamin C, as I've mentioned before, and I've got a little hack for you on vitamin C. So you can increase your vitamin C intake by combining certain things together. And vitamin C and iron work together particularly well. So I'm a vegan, so I don't eat meat. So for me, coming from a kind of plant-based perspective, for me to increase my vitamin C, I might have some really leafy greens like kale or spinach, which will increase my iron levels. And then afterwards, I might have an orange or a glass of orange juice, and the two combined together really increase your iron absorption rates. The vitamin C doesn't just do the vitamin C stuff, it also really increases your absorption rate from the iron as well. So the two work closely hand in hand. So those of you that eat meat, you could do that with a steak, for example. You could have a piece of beef, which is obviously very, very rich in iron. You could have a piece of liver, for example, and then you could have an orange afterwards, or you could have an orange juice, for example. So vitamin C is quite clever like that. Magnesium, again, I've mentioned before. Now, I'm not going to talk about foods on this front because I've already shared with you a list of how you can increase magnesium with your nuts and your seeds. But you can also increase magnesium through bath salts. So I don't know how many of you have seen magnesium flakes. You can get these flakes that you put in the bath, and obviously you bathe in them, but of course it's being absorbed into your skin, which is absorbed into your bloodstream, because anything you put on your skin is being absorbed into your bloodstream. So you could also think about that. If you weren't keen on some of the options I mentioned for eating magnesium, you could bathe in it instead. So there's an option. Please don't eat the bath salt. Don't confuse the two.
Don't try that at home.
Yeah, don't don't go thinking it's your Himalayan pink rock salt or something and sprinkling it. And Johnny said, not to sound weird, I've not had a bath in years, but I bet that's because you showered, Johnny. So. But you could also make it into a salt scrub, couldn't you, if you're using the shower?
True.
I've just quickly seen, Alison has also said in the chat, I've been knitting like mad during lockdown for charity, just can't drop anything off yet, so my success is measured by the declining space in my spare room. Oh, so Alison, that's going back to that oxytocin piece then again, that kind of giving and doing something for others. So that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And then finally, on the oxytocin intake, your dietary fats. So again, we're going back to those oily fishes. If any of you are like me, you're vegan or vegetarian and you don't eat fish and you don't eat any meats of any kind, and you need to find that omega-3 intake from somewhere else, then your nuts and your seeds are going to be key. And I also take a supplement as well to make sure I keep my omega-3s high. But you can also find those fats in mushrooms, in peppers, in tomatoes, spinach, avocado. All these types of things are also going to have really, really good fatty acids that you can use to increase your oxytocin. And I'm going to stop looking at that picture now because that salmon just looks so delicious. Let's take it off the screen now. So let's now move on to endorphins. So this is our last one. So I'll go through these last 3 slides with you, and then we'll have a couple of minutes at the end if you have questions for me. So endorphin is your pain hormone. Now, this is not about giving you pain, it's about protecting you from pain. So it masks it. So you may have heard of people when they do the London Marathon, for example, who might have even broken a leg, twisted an ankle, and they've carried on running. You see these stories, you know, and even films of people battling against adversity, you know, people that have climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, they've been to the Himalayas, and you know they've really injured themselves, but they kept on going. That is your endorphins kicking in to get you to that end finish. Now, it masks it, it doesn't get rid of it. So as soon as you've achieved that thing, you've got to that point where you need to be, the pain is going to come back. So it's very temporary, it masks it, and it's very much to get you where you need to be. But beyond that point, that's it. You definitely need to have medical intervention. So it boosts your self-esteem. It's a real confidence booster, your endorphins. It can help you reduce weight and can reduce stress. And the reason it does that, if you remember going back to the very beginning when I spoke about cortisol, how too much cortisol can increase stress, can increase your weight gain. Well, your endorphins just do that. They come in like a big bulldozer and just knock that cortisol out of the way. Because can you imagine being in that situation? You run a marathon, you've twisted your ankle, you're in extreme pain. Your cortisol wants to kick in and start saying, this is dangerous. Your anxiety's kicking in, your adrenaline's kicking in, saying you need to get out of the situation, it's dangerous. Your endorphins are going, no, I'm going to get through this. We're going to make sure you get there. So it knocks it out of the way. So it's likely to cause a euphoric feeling, that sense of really feeling good. So it could be from a physical perspective, it could be from exercise, or it could be from a few other things. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll show you. So stimulated by physical action. So this again goes back to similar dopamine, and you often find dopamine and endorphins work alongside each other. Of course, again, if we're talking about running, then of course that would make sense. So it's something that is kinesthetic within your body. Now, it doesn't always have to be that you are doing any kind of cardio, running on the spot, jogging. It doesn't have to be that. It could be something like laughing. Think about all the muscles that are engaged when you laugh. Your facial muscles are engaged. Your lungs are working to get air in and out because you're laughing. Really, you know, the real deep belly laugh, almost where it makes you cry because something is so funny.
Yeah.
And you get a really great euphoric feeling, don't you, from laughing?
I love that. I love that feeling, that type of laugh.
Laughing feels amazing. And, you know, they do often say, don't they, that laughter is the best medicine. It really is, because you think about that stimulation of the physical reaction in your body is just, you know, these endorphins are just going to keep on coming. And that's why I put crying down as well. Because whilst crying is linked with sadness, crying also engages the same muscles in your body as laughing. Now, I'm not talking about, just the tear running down your face. I'm talking about that real over, oh my gosh, this is, I'm heartbroken type crying. But after you cried, you feel this sense of, I'm so glad system, and that's your endorphins kicking in there. That sense of calm that you have afterwards has come from the endorphins that release you've allowed out. Exercising differently. So if you decide to take on a variety of different exercises, so perhaps one day you run, then the next day you might do some weightlifting, you might go along to Johnny's class and do a body pump class, then the following day you might decide to do a dance class. Keeping the variety is likely to elevate your endorphins a little bit higher, because your body doesn't start falling into, oh yeah, we know this drill. It's that variety, that different physical reaction that even elevates your endorphins a little bit higher. So you'll still have endorphins from exercising, but the more you mix it up, the more you'll start to see those endorphins increase. And the more fun you make it as well. The more fun you have, because again, laughing's fun, right? No one laughs and goes, well, that was awful. Because it's a fun experience. So because of that, your endorphins start to increase as well. So stretching. So when I teach yoga, normally everyone walks away from their class going, oh, I feel so much better after that. And that's because you've stretched your body out, you've really allowed your muscles to elongate, you've moved your body differently, you stimulated everything about your body that needs to be moved, and therefore your endorphins have kicked in. And then the last point here is around aromatherapy. Now, it doesn't have to be aromatherapy. It can be certain smells. So that smell that reminds you of something good, that smell, that sun lotion that reminds you of your favourite holiday, that meal, that smell of a certain ingredient in a food that takes you back to a certain meal you had with a certain friend. It's those memories that are stimulated from that aromatherapy, those scents, that also increase your endorphins. So moving on to the last slide then. How to increase your endorphin feast. Chocolate, here we go again. Then we've got strawberries, animal protein, so going back to the things I mentioned before around the meats and the dairies. Oranges will increase your endorphin levels. Spicy food is fantastic, especially if you're using something like cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper, a hot paprika, those kinds of things, again, because it's going to really warm the body up. That will increase your endorphins. Grapes, bizarrely, I was really surprised when I found that when I was reading through my nutrition stuff. Grapes, that's a bit of an odd one, but yeah, grapes are good for that. Nuts and seeds, again, and ginseng, which again, going back to tea, is also something you can drink in a tea as well. So moving on then to, I think it's the last slide now. So just to really talk about some quick tools and tips for really increasing your rest and relaxation when it comes to allowing those neurochemicals to kind of kick in. There are several resources you can use for yoga, meditation and mindfulness, which I've listed here. So there's Downward Dog, which is a yoga app. Yoga by Adrienne, she has a fantastic free YouTube channel. Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra have a fantastic app as well, which is called the Meditation Experience. Many of you might have come across Headspace. Headspace was one of the very first things on the market when it came to meditation. And there's now a great series on Netflix around mindfulness if you wanted to go that direction. Calm is also another app which is fantastic. And not only is it good for you, but also if you have children, they have children's stories on there, children's yoga, children's meditation, and children's mindfulness. So it's a real good family app. I also use the 5-minute journal app. So when it comes to oxytocin take-in and connecting with myself and connecting with others, I love to journal. So I use this app for that. And then one last thing before we go to the Q&A is Forest, which is this amazing app that you go onto and you plant a tree. And if you navigate off of that screen where your tree is, your tree dies, which means that while you're working, you can't look at that text message that's come in. You can't look at that pop-up that's just coming to tell you that you've lost your bid on eBay. You can't look at any of those things because your tree's going to die. And of course, thinking about our neurochemicals, do we want to win or do we want to kill the tree? So actually, it is like a tree Tamagotchi. I actually described Johnny actually a little while ago, and I don't think many people got it, so I thought I won't say it again. But yeah, you have to try and keep this tree alive. So they're just like my final hints and tips for you. And then we'll hand over to a
Yes. And thank you very much for sharing that, Sophie. And again, we'll share these slides and the recording with everyone who's actually in the chat room right now. So if there's any information that you've just missed, you will get the copy of the slides just as a follow-up. So yes, Q&A. I know we did have some questions and comments throughout the full presentation. If you do have any questions for Sophie now, please do feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm sure that Sophie will answer those when she can. Or I mean, if you do have any questions after this session, please feel free to ping them over to me and Sophie separately. I'm sure Sophie would be happy to answer any questions that you do have. But whilst you think of something, if you've got anything that you want to address to Sophie, I'm just going to move on to the next slide very quickly. So as mentioned, this was the first part of Sophie's 3-part series. So thank you very much again, Sophie, for doing that for us. The next one, Sophie, is on careers, is that right?
It is.
It is, and that's on the 17th of February. So what will you be looking at the careers section?
So we'll be exploring how this is where I'm taking my nutrition and yoga hat off and I'm stepping back into my corporate role. So in this space, we're going to be talking about how you can start thinking about your career goals, elevating your career experience, how you might want to think about any moves you might want to make if you want to move upwards or sideways or even somewhere else. I'm going to be talking to you about, even though it may not feel like a very safe place in the marketplace right now to be looking for new roles and moving into new organisations, even if you're still staying within the civil service, it's an ideal opportunity for you to have that acknowledgement and spend that hour to really think about what you want from your career, because actually I think now is a great time to be doing that.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that will be on the 17th of February. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you have any contacts or even any friends or family who are in that position, please do tell them and to sign up to our training alerts at www.civilservicecollege.org.uk, where they can actually register onto that webinar. And then we've got another one on the 17th of March, and that one's going to be based around your relationship with technology, which I'm sure Sophie will tell you all about on the next webinar as well. There's so much coming up, and we love having Sophie on, so yeah, that's great. And you can see here we do have a webinar coming up next week for any of our policymakers that might be with us this morning. We do actually run webinars on a weekly basis, so this is the next one coming up, which is the Thursday the 4th of February, Why Forecast, a Policymaker's Guide During Tough Times. And we are teaming up with the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, so that will be next week at 10:30 on Thursday the 4th of February. And yep, stay connected with us. Please do join us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course this recording will be put on YouTube as well. So yeah, you can share that with your contacts and colleagues, whoever it is, and feel free to circulate that. So yes, we've got some lovely comments coming through. Thank you all again for joining us, and of course a massive thank you to Sophie. I love having you on here. It's you always kickstart our mornings bright and very upbeat, so it's lovely. It's been lovely to have you, Sophie.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on. Actually, I was just quickly looking through the chat and there was just 2 things that I missed. So Andrea, can I just come back on the 2?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Close off. So Alison said about people always say being vegan or vegetarian is healthier than being an omnivore, but this is a myth because you can live on nothing but chips and call yourself a vegan. Yeah, absolutely right there. And really important that if people decide to remove meat or animal products from their diet, they educate themselves about how to replace the nutrients from other sources. Absolutely on that front, Alison. And I've been vegan for 4 years, and it is a struggle. It's not easy to be vegan at all. You really have to be very conscious about what you're eating. So completely true. It would be very easy to just be a vegan.
Yeah, absolutely. And is mentioned again, if anyone does have any questions, obviously we can hang around and feel free to ask Sophie, or I will put my email address into the chat box. And if there's anything that Sophie touched on today, if you want to find out about the work that Sophie does, or if there's anything else that you want to ask her, feel free. My email address is andrea@civilservicecollege.org.uk, and I'll put that in the chat box in a second.
Brilliant. And I think the last one, I think Johnny's gone now, I'm not sure if he's still here, but Johnny said, is smell not the strongest sense for association with memory? And yes, Johnny, that is right. It is. So really, again, linking back to what we were talking about, endorphins and the aromatherapy piece, yeah, that is going to be one of the key ways we can recall things from our memory.
Yeah.
So I will leave it there. You've got Andrea's email address if you want to ask me or Andrea any questions. But it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for hanging back for the last 5 minutes. I've got a bit overexcited today.
Oh no, it's been fantastic. I don't mind. Well, no, thank you very much, Sophie, and we'll hope to see you back. Well, we will see you back next month, so that's great. And thank you to our participants. It's been lovely. Thank you for your comments and your questions. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. Bye, Sophie. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.